That's it. Thank you very much. I want to thank you very much for listening to my story.
Thank you, Walter.
I know you got plenty of other things to do.
Just a comment, Walter, there are zoning bylaws, and then there's a Board of Appeals where people go to get waivers on those bylaws. And that's the board that has created is responsible for giving waivers to the current bylaws based on input from residents, input from proponents and opponents of a particular waiver. Now, for example, if you wanted to build a garage on your property and it was 20 feet from the boundary instead of 25, I think that's what the law is, you would go to the Board of Appeals to get a waiver for that. Right? So, obviously, this one's a difficult one for the Board of Appeals, I'm sure.
I think that they could get
But I've been assured by the chairman of the Board of Appeals, and I know they work hard, and they've got a good track record, okay, that they are working to bring this thing to closure. Yeah. And, whether it's the meeting in July or August, I guess I commit to this, that if it goes beyond that, I think I would, have another conversation with the chairman of the Board of Appeals and find out why they, can't come to some decision. Now, the decision they come to, that's a whole other thing, right? I mean, that decision that they come to, you may not be happy with, or the person applying for it may not be happy to, and the next step, obviously, is to go to court and appeal it. And either side can do that.
In this case, it wasn't that way. Building inspector had to let them have an appeal because the neighbors were going crazy with these people. I mean, in order for them to stay that, the building inspector told them, you're gonna have to appeal this. This is how it all started. Otherwise, nothing would be done. And it's not just a case of a small variance or something like that. It's a case of a blight. I mean, I know you've been up there and
Right, I've been up there.
But it is.
But I think that one of the things that is a way of working this issue is that, I don't know what the Board of Appeals is gonna vote on or what they're gonna do, right? But once they've come up with a ruling, right, and say, this is what you can and can't do, then as soon as that person steps over that boundary, right, then now there's the building inspector has some real authority to deal with the issue. So, I can understand your frustration, but I think we need to wait this thing out.
People are wanting the law. One of the DeSimones came to my house, sat down and trying to soft-soap me. And when I didn't listen, he left, he said, I'll still be in business at this place. These people are adamant to what they want to do.
Well, I think we have to let this process complete.
Yeah, it's been taking a long time.
How many years, Walter, how many years you been there?
What's that?
How many years you been there? Where you live?
50, 60 years,
Yeah, and DeSimone's have been there probably, what, 40?
something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been an ongoing issue for
Yeah.
for far too long, far too long.
But we have no animosity about the DeSimones.
Right.
But, they just, like they.
It's finally coming to a head,
Yeah.
And this is the furthest that it's ever gotten, to the credit of the current building inspector. It's finally coming to a head, and it has been a frustration for that neighborhood for years. It's been a frustration to Town Hall for years. And it's finally coming to a head in relation, and again, whatever the decision they render, somebody's not gonna be happy. But at least there'll be some sort of decision made that either side can hang their hat on, and then eventually it's probably gonna end up in court anyway. But it's a question of,
I'm not the only one complaining.
oh, of course, believe me, we know.
It goes
I know.
way down to the end of what they call, used to be the acres.
Right.
Way down to Park Street.
Walt, I'll be the first to admit, I've seen it, I've heard it for years, and it's been
Now, what
very,
are you
very
gonna do about it?
frustrating.
This is
It's
the
running,
last straw.
it's running through its process now, and that's
I know
the
it.
best we can do.
I know.
And again,
Unofficially, you could talk to especially you.
I could talk to my brother over Thanksgiving dinner.
Not a very good subject, is it?
Yeah. Maybe the turkey wouldn't taste as good, but.
I think, I think everybody's got their sight on this issue, and I just ask you for a little more patience, and hopefully, within the next couple of meetings, they'll get this thing to a point where then we can go fight about it.
Really, do you know of any construction company in the town of North Reading that does business in a residential zone?
Yes,
Yes,
Yeah?
yes,
and there were complaints.
yes.
You do, okay.
I have more than my fingers and toes.
This one could set a precedent.
There are a lot of people operating out of their households,
Oh, I know.
running construction businesses,
Yeah, that's okay.
carpenters, plumbers, electricians, operating out of their home without special permits.
Yeah.
And
And then there are
with their
some,
equipment
then
there.
there are
It's
some
not as
that
bad,
have.
again, the situation that you have in your neighborhood is unacceptable.
Yeah, we get complaints from people that have issues that don't even come close to the mess that's down there, you know? And it's just a case of, the person's got a permit to run his office out of there, but every once in a while, there's 3 or 4 trucks parked in the driveway, which
This is
is not
what's
supposed to
gonna
happen.
They're never gonna follow these regulations.
Then the building inspector goes down and talks to them, and the trucks go away for a while. And I guess maybe we need to get more heavy-handed with the
Resolve
fines.
Before I leave this planet. It's possible.
Okay, Walter,
Thank you,
thank you
Walter.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is Town Administrator's Report. Mr. Belaconis.
Good evening again. Couple of quick updates. The third meeting house renovation project is ready for bid. An application is submitted to the Historic District Commission for consideration this evening, and assuming favorable action, general bids will be opened about July 22nd. There'll be a pre-bid conference with any interested bidder the week of July 5th. And one of the items that slows this whole process down is there has to be something called sub-bids submitted with the project. Sub-bids are required for any project where the cost is in excess of $100,000. There are 17 different trades. It's one of the peculiar things in public construction law that we do need to comply with. But the good news is the project is ready to begin. I know that there was an informational meeting held a week ago down at the senior center where information was presented. And like I said, the next step is to get the exterior renovations approved by the Historic District Commission, and we'll proceed with the project. Next is just an update on the FEMA reimbursements for the March and April floods. The amount of requested documented costs by the town are in excess of $200,000, and that is for labor and equipment costs. We can expect reimbursement of 75% of that number. So I would expect that we'll be receiving reimbursement in excess of $150,000 from the federal government. Again, presuming all of our costs are approved, and the documents were signed, they were submitted to FEMA last week. There are some additional costs that we do need to tabulate, and that's the cost for damage to public property that's not covered by insurance. And that would be work on roadways and drainage systems. I don't expect it to be a huge number, but we will submit for reimbursement of those also. The only other item that remains up in the air is in the past, the state has reimbursed us, or reimbursed cities and towns between 12.5% and 25% to cover the gap. It remains to be seen whether the Commonwealth will be in the financial situation to do any type of reimbursement going forward. So it could be that the 25% that's not reimbursed through the federal government will remain the responsibility of the town, and that's a very realistic possibility. I think we're all aware of it, and I wouldn't count on the state reimbursing us at this stage.
But, just in relation to that gap.
Right.
We have had sufficient funds to cover our
Yes,
costs to date anyway.
yes, we have.
So this would be found money that we get, the 75%, which will be available for public safety, as we spoke earlier about. And this 25% that would be missing is not
Exactly.
something we'd have to make up.
Exactly.
Which is good news.
That's good news.
It is good news, and I think there was some concern that we would reach that number to reimburse public safety, and I'm confident that we're gonna be well in excess of that amount.
Next?
Next is, you received a copy of the letter from Justy Hingston and Company. Dick Hingston was in to meet with the board a little while ago to discuss the fiscal year 2009 audit. One of the things that he did indicate is he has to submit a statement to the board, commenting on internal management, and you'll note that, as he said at the meeting, there were no significant audit findings related to either the management of financial functions of the town. I wanted to, you have a copy of that, so you're aware of it. If you have any questions, you can contact him directly about the letter that's in your packet.
Greg, this has come up before, on these revolving funds, both town and school, have they taken a look at those? And
Yes, they're asked every year to take a look at the activity associated with those funds.
So is this a requirement of the town, that we have to get a CPA to certify our numbers for 2009? Is that right?
Annual audit is a requirement, and then this additional letter that you've received this evening is something that came out of the whole, I would call it the accounting scandals of several years ago, where they needed to document to the board or to the executives that, in fact, there was no collusion or anything going on behind the scenes. And that's what the purpose of this letter is just to identify that fact.
Now, it says the report was issued in January 2010.
Right.
So this letter is just stating the fact of what they did in January 2010?
When they issue their draft audit report, that's the date that they stamp on it.
Okay.
So the report that would have been presented a couple of weeks ago is in fact the report that they're speaking to in this letter.
So it usually takes about a year to get that done?
I think the audit begins once the books are closed, typically after the first of the year. So there's probably a 6 to 7 month delay between the time that the fiscal year ends and the time that the auditors begin their activities. It's not unusual.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Next?
Good, let me move on. The board has received a letter from CHAPA concerning a potential affordable housing unit available at 63 Central Street. The letter indicates that there's a 90-day window to exercise the option to acquire the affordable unit. Just note that in keeping with past protocol, we did notify the Community Planning Commission, the Housing Authority, and the Housing Partnership to review and provide a recommendation. Town government is generally not in the business of actively managing and holding real estate, especially real estate such as this. But I will let you know what the recommendations will be, and want an opportunity to respond within the timeframes that are set forth in the letter.
The question I have, Craig, is, so people are giving this up,
That's right.
So it could end up being lost as an affordable unit?
That's right. But they have a obligation to find a qualified tenant or a qualified buyer within 90 days.
No, we have 90 days to act on it.
9 days to act on it, no. And then if within the time frame that's specified here, they can't find a bona fide buyer,
Okay, then they
find a
can.
bona fide buyer, then after a certain period of time, they're allowed to put it on the market at full fair market value, rather than $166,000.
So,
And then the difference,
Comes
say
to
they
the
sell,
town.
say it's worth $300,000, and they have to sell it at 166. They don't have a bona fide buyer and can't get the 166 sold. After a certain period of time, they get to sell it at full fair market value. But the difference between the 166 and the 300,000 comes back to the town to be utilized for affordable housing purposes. Whether it be purchase another unit or use it to go towards some other affordable housing initiative. So the money is not lost, and the owner of the property does not recognize the gain.
No matter what.
So you may lose the unit.
Right.
As far as an affordable housing unit, but any gain on it comes to the town to be used for affordable housing purposes.
interesting.
Yeah, it's
I
a good
didn't know
gimmick.
that.
It's a good deal for us.
Bob, quick question on that. After we sell it at full, if it's sold at full market value, then we lose it? Is that what you were saying?
You lose it in
Lose
the
it as
town.
part of your account, as far as your